Imagine a person showed up to your church by themselves last Sunday. This actually may have happened to you. Let's just assume for a minute that she is married, but she came alone last Sunday. And she wasn't just kind of new to your church. We would call her new to church, like period. A volunteer maybe met her near the guest kiosk just inside your main front door, and they started talking. And then the volunteer offered to show her around the building. And like somewhere between the lobby and that preschool area, she just kind of paused because she lost a child a few years earlier. And she didn't even really know where else to turn. So on this morning, on this Sunday, she turned towards your church and your church building, the one that she had never entered before. And and it is filled with people that she has never met, but she is carrying something almost nobody around her can see. I'm going to give her a name so we can talk about it. Let's call her Kelly. Now, Kelly, she did not walk into the church that morning evaluating your sermons. She wasn't wondering whether the worship set had enough energy. Kelly wasn't thinking about, whether your announcements were too long. Kelly wasn't asking, anything that important to you. She was asking a very, very basic question. And maybe she wasn't asking it consciously, but she was asking it. And here's the question Kelly's asking. Is this place safe enough for me to stay? That's the question. Can I truly trust these people? Am I going to feel stupid because I don't know what to do? Is somebody going to notice me without making me feel exposed? Can I sit here without having to pretend that I understand what's happening? And here's the problem. Most churches are not designed around Kelly. They are designed around you and designed around me. And it makes sense. We design Sunday from the inside out, right? Our staff meetings are full of people who know the building. They're on staff. They know the language. They know the service order. They know where the bathrooms are. They know which door leads to the kids area. They know when somebody's on stage and what a growth track means. And everyone, is supposed to kind of know what all this stuff means too, right? But here's what we know. That's a huge problem. The longer you've been in church, the harder it becomes, though, to experience your church like someone like Kelly. Like familiarity, it really does change what you see. It makes your eyes just tired. They're not fresh. And maybe more importantly, it keeps us not just from seeing what could be or whatever, but it stops us from seeing some things. Like you don't notice the sign that makes perfect sense to you, but it only makes sense after it's been explained. You don't notice that the children's check-in process requires a, sociology degree and a minor in church culture, right? I joke, but right, come on, right? You don't notice that you used 4 insider phrases in the first 7 minutes of your church service. You didn't notice the awkward stretch between, somebody walking through those front doors and somebody actually acknowledging that they exist and don't know anybody. Because as far as you're concerned, everything's working. But for Kelly, it might not be working. In fact, familiarity is the enemy of a great guest experience. And listen, this is not like a hospitality problem. This is a design problem. And yeah, of course, hospitality is a part of it. But friendly people certainly matter. But you can have incredibly friendly volunteers operating inside of an experience that is structurally confusing for guests. Everybody can smile while Kelly still feels lost and confused, skeptical, afraid. And that's why I want to kind of think beyond the greeters for a moment in this conversation. Like, I want to think about the entire journey a person like Kelly experiences. And as we say all the time, it starts in the parking lot. That's exactly where Sunday begins for a first-time guest. It is not when the countdown video starts or when the band walks out or when you stand up to do an announcement or whatever. Sunday begins the moment they turn off of the road onto your property and start looking for where to go. And guess what? They're already asking questions like, where am I supposed to park? Which entrance do I use? Is that door the one that everybody uses or just the kids? Do I check my child in before I go to the auditorium? Is it safe to check my child in before I go to the auditorium? Where am I supposed to sit? Am I late? Can I bring in my coffee? Is that allowed? Listen, Kelly's looking at how people are dressed, evaluating how she is dressed. She's thinking, am I about to walk through the wrong door and have 8 people look at me like I know what I'm doing? For us, these are like duh questions. They seem like such small questions, and they are small questions. This is why I think so many leaders tend to miss them. But small questions create cumulative friction. Okay, let me say it again. Small questions by themselves may be relatively harmless, but small questions accumulated together create friction. And when somebody already feels emotionally exposed, like a Kelly, friction gets heavier and heavier. Listen, Kelly may already be anxious. She probably is before she ever gets out of the car. She's probably been anxious since Thursday when someone invited her and she agreed to come. And now she is driving around the building looking for the entrance. And she walks inside and maybe no one speaks to her. Or, they try to say something like, kids check-in is over here by the commons, and you're like, great. And she's thinking, what in the world is a commons? You've called it that for 9 years. She has no idea, right? She's been on the property for 9 minutes. That gap, it really matters. And so I want to give you a line that I think every pastor should carry into every Sunday planning conversation. Like every Sunday, and here it is. Somebody in your building is giving God and the church one more chance. Now, I'm going to say it again, and I know it sounds dramatic, but hang with me. Somebody in your building right now is giving God and the church one more chance. And I don't mean that kind of dramatically, even though it sounds a little dramatic. It's literal. Somebody is there because a marriage is collapsing. Somebody is going to sit in your church on Sunday who has lost somebody close to them recently. Somebody just got a diagnosis. Somebody has a child in trouble. Somebody may be lonely enough that they finally took the risk to show up. I mean, somebody said, I don't know what else to do, but maybe I'll try church. And listen, if that Sunday goes poorly, you may not get another Sunday with them. That doesn't mean that we, manipulate the service around pain. In fact, I don't like it when churches constantly talk about how we're all hurting. A lot of people in your room aren't hurting. So we don't need, if you're a worship leader, we don't need the worship leader saying all the sappy stuff every week, okay? Especially manipulatively. So I don't want us to assume everybody in the room is going through something, but I also don't want us to assume everybody in the room is like us and gets it and is processing hardship the way we are, and this is just so unintentional and subtle, but churches drift into this kind of thinking so easily. Like nobody sits in a staff meeting and says, you know what, let's make the experience harder for our guests. Of course not. That meeting has never happened in your church. That's why we do call it a drift. It's way quieter than that. The church maybe just grows and more people know where things are and more people just know the language and volunteers are competent now and staff becomes larger and more experienced. And gradually we just start designing for the people who are already inside because more of them are inside. And then the room fills up and we assume the front door must be working. And maybe it is, but full rooms can fool you, can't they? Like fullness measures some of what has already happened, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what somebody brand new experienced this morning. You can have a full auditorium and a confusing front door. In fact, you can have a full auditorium and a front door can be as big as the back door, but it feels great because look how many people are here. You can have a great preaching and poor orientation, right? You can have wonderful volunteers that, still require guests to do too much work to feel like they know how to join a team or belong. So how do you fix this, right? And the fix is really just a change of perspective. What we have to do is stop designing Sunday only from the stage out. We have to design it from the parking lot in. It's just a perspective shift. That's all it is. And the easiest way to begin is not another meeting. It's actually by taking a walk. Here's something you can do this week. I'd love this week, right? I want you to audit your church like a guest. Hey, if you're a real overachiever, here's a fun idea. Ask a guest to do this for you. In fact, don't hold me accountable to this or don't make fun of me too much, okay? But I have been known to actually pay unchurched people to show up to my church, walk through it on a Sunday morning, and then fill out a little form that I would give them so I could understand what their experience was like. I've taken them to lunches. That's kind of paying for it. I've promised them, that. I've given them $25 or some gift cards. I mean, whatever. I mean, it's important, though, to get their fresh eyes, especially, I think, from a skeptic. So audit your church, even if it's just by yourself. Walk around it like you're a guest. And if you're the lead pastor, I really do think that you should participate in this. You should do this. I mean, do not just delegate this to somebody on your guest services team or, a staff member. It's good for them to do it too, but you need to see it as well. Because you know what? Leaders eventually stop seeing what their systems make other people experience because for you, it's working great. So go to your church before Sunday, or better yet, maybe do it on an actual Sunday. Park where a guest would park. Wait in the traffic. Watch the guest services team. If you have a parking team, which I think you should, watch how they operate. Watch how they greet. Don't go to first of all, don't have a reserved spot. But if you have one, don't go to that. Park where everybody else parks. And I don't want you to go into the magical staff entrance where you have a key fob and nobody else does, okay? None of that. I want you to interact with civilization here. I want you to park out there, walk in with everybody else, see what you see. Watch the people in front of you. Watch what they're seeing. Watch where their eyes are going. I mean, is it completely obvious where you should go? If you had a 3-year-old in one hand and a diaper bag in the other, would you know which entrance to use? Walk through the doors and don't ask a question, right? Just see how far you think you could get if you didn't know the system. What happens if nobody helps you? Try to find the bathroom without using your, church leader knowledge, Where's the children's check-in? Where's the auditorium? Is it labeled even in a way that people know what it is? Are there exits that are clearly labeled? Pay attention to the moments when you have to rely on something you know that other people probably don't know. That's a great moment to pay attention to because that's the moment of friction. And if you can, sit through the beginning of the service and listen through the lens of that outsider. Listen like Kelly. For the first, 10 minutes, write down every phrase that would require some amount of prior knowledge. I mean, if you use a word like group link or whatever, growth track or serve day teams or, students are heading to transit later or whatever, And listen, I love those names. I love having brands. I think all that's great, but you can't just say them without explaining them. I mean, insider language is really efficient for insiders. That's why we use it, right? But just remember who's paying the price for that efficiency. People like Kelly, people who are giving God and the church maybe one more chance. So how could you do that differently? Do you tell people what's about to happen? Do we explain why we're doing it and what we're doing? If there's an offering, does the guests know what's expected from them? I mean, here's the deal. Everyone stands, right? Is there enough context for that person who hasn't been in church since they were 9 years old and doesn't feel that they, you don't want them to feel like they've missed something, right? So is everybody standing and sitting in different times and nobody's telling them to do it? Is it like popcorn stand up? That's the worst, especially for the guest. If there's a greeting moment, and God bless you if there is, right? But what does it feel like to the person standing alone while everybody else just turns towards the people they already know? I mean, evaluate those kinds of things as if you're an outsider. Try to experience them as a normal person, not as you. And that's a hard job, right? But it's one of the best ways I have found to find out what is working. As I mentioned, if you can't figure out a way to do that on your own, find somebody else to do it for you. Invite somebody who has never been to your church and tell them that you really need their help. Give them a free gift card if you have to. But whatever it takes to learn what's actually happening, it is worth it. And ask them some questions. Where were you confused? When did you feel comfortable or uncomfortable? Was there anything that was awkward? Was there any moment when you didn't know what you were supposed to do? Did the language make sense to you? Was there anything that almost made you kind of pull back a little bit, And then listen, don't explain anything. Don't offer anything defensively. Just listen. Just listen. Because, I mean, because here, I mean, what we're going to be tempted to do when we hear this stuff, we're going to say, well, usually there's a volunteer there, and today was a little bit different, and normally we have a sign. No excuses. Just listen. Because all of those excuses may be valid, but they weren't true today. And Kelly might have shown up today and might have been evaluating if God and the church deserved a second chance. So, how can you begin to see things the way the outsider does? It is critically important to figure that out. And I'll just say it one more time. Your mission is the most important mission in your city. And it needs to be led as if that is true, led as if that is true. Kelly is going to show up this week, maybe a couple of them. And if someone is giving God in the church one more shot, let's do everything we possibly can to make them want to give him a second shot. And that begins in the parking lot.